Imagine being sent to one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy, a place with sulfuric storms, freezing nights, and carnivorous plants. To the Galactic Council, this was an impossible mission, one that only the bravest would attempt with the best technology. But to the human explorers, it was just another day, and maybe even a bit of fun. When Captain Collins and his team of human explorers were sent to survey planet Zethrius IX, the Galactic Council's High Command expected caution, strict protocols, and a flawless adherence to survival measures. After all, no species in the galaxy had dared to approach Zethrius IX before. The Council even made preparations for worst-case scenarios, assuming humans, who they'd heard were resilient yet still fragile, would only endure with their strictest survival routines. Can you imagine being on a planet like that? What would you bring to make it feel like home? Let us know in the comments. Zethrius IX was notorious across the galaxy, a planet so uninhabitable that even the boldest species deemed it untouchable. Toxic air, sulfuric storms, bone-chilling nights, and gravity shifts made it a scientific enigma and a living nightmare. Alien High Command deemed it a training ground for bravery, but avoided it for actual missions. No one expected any species to take on Zethrius IX willingly, but humans had a reputation for the impossible. Known for their bizarre survival tactics and unusual resilience, humans had somehow convinced the Galactic Council they could survey Zethrius IX. Reluctantly, Command agreed but expected regular updates, every one of them anticipating an emergency call for extraction. The High Command's predictions. For days leading up to the human team's arrival, Command staff prepared simulations of what they expected to happen. In their minds, the humans would approach the planet like any sensible species, cautiously, adhering to every guideline and relying on technology for protection. Command Counselor Wysall had been appointed as the chief observer, spending hours poring over survival protocol, emergency contingencies, and planetary data, convinced that no unplanned variable could enter this mission. She took comfort in the detail. As a scientist, she saw humans as physically inferior, yet oddly resourceful, known for some dangerous fascination with pushing limits. Perhaps they're just very cautious this time, she thought. After all, this isn't a terrain for bravado. Observing the descent, Ysall's screen glowed as the ship carrying the human team began its descent. She watched as the thick cloud cover of Zethrius IX swallowed the ship, sending her heart into her throat. The human's craft was equipped with state-of-the-art shields, yes, but even those were tested against the planet's storms only in theory. She braced herself, halfway expecting them to abort, but the humans powered through, their engines flaring as the ship landed on the jagged black surface below. And then, there was nothing. Not a single emergency signal or distress call. Ysall waited, every second stretched out like an eternity, fully expecting the humans to voice their struggles or demand extraction. But silence stretched, leaving only her mounting curiosity. Alien Council begins to worry. It had been 3 full rotations since the humans had landed, and High Command was growing restless. Whispers about the human team's silence spread through the Galactic Council. There was a certain level of irritation in the command room, as alien dignitaries debated the wisdom of allowing Earthlings to undertake this mission. Had the humans underestimated Zethrius IX? Or perhaps they had been too confident and were now in over their heads. Ysall, however, was less concerned with the Council's speculative arguments. She was captivated by the silent feed from Zethrius IX as she puzzled over the humans' lack of communication. Finally, after much debate, the Council decided to initiate a video link to assess the status of the mission. The room fell silent as Ysall tapped the command, and the screen brightened, capturing the first live feed from the human crew. The unexpected scene. The image that greeted Wysall made her eyes widen in shock. She expected to see the humans huddled in a survival tent, bundled against the relentless cold, or attempting to fortify their shelter against the sulfur storms that raged across the planet. Instead, she saw a circle of humans around a fire. A fire, Ysall gasped. Fire was strictly prohibited on volatile planets like Zethrius IX. It was reckless, even primitive. Yet there they sat, laughing and chatting as if nothing was out of the ordinary. They'd arranged themselves around the flickering flames in a rough semicircle, appearing not the least bit concerned with their dangerous surroundings. "What are they doing?" Yusal leaned forward, studying their faces. Captain Collins, the human leader, was grinning, holding a long stick over the fire with what looked like a white blob on the end. One of his team members threw something into the fire, sparking a fresh wave of laughter. It dawned on Yusal, they were enjoying themselves. They were treating this hostile planet as if it were a picnic spot, completely unbothered by the sulfuric storms and freezing temperatures. One of the humans reached into a bag and pulled out another of those white blobs, skewering it and passing it to a teammate, who laughed and mimicked the action. Her mind raced. Were they cooking? On a planet renowned for its lethality, initial report, and reactions. Yusal hastily documented her observations, barely able to keep up with her shock. Her fingers hovered over the command to report back to the council, but she hesitated. How could she phrase this? The humans appeared to be camping. She knew that wasn't quite accurate, but any other explanation felt equally bizarre. As she typed, she couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that these humans operated by some incomprehensible set of instincts. Their technology was only minimally set up. No scanners appeared to be running, and they seemed completely relaxed, laughing as they cooked their strange, puffy food over the fire. To them, Zethrius the Nine was an adventure. She felt the absurdity pressing in around her. What possible protocol could accommodate this? The aliens' confusion and growing concern. The Council's response to her report was one of collective disbelief. The words protocol breach, reckless, and incomprehensible dominated the discussion. And yet, as more officials tuned into the feed, they found themselves captivated by this shocking spectacle. "They're not afraid?" one counselor muttered, dumbfounded. "They're behaving as if it's some kind of recreational outing," another replied, scandalized. And as they watched, the humans continued their casual camping trip on the deadliest known planet in the quadrant, laughing and toasting marshmallows under the distant toxic clouds of Zethrius the Nine. Final thoughts from Yusal. As she observed them, Yusal's initial disapproval softened into something that surprised her: admiration. These humans, with their seemingly primitive tendencies, their strange food rituals, and their cavalier disregard for danger, had turned the most hostile planet in the galaxy into a fireside gathering. At that moment, Yusal understood that the humans didn't see danger as other species did. They weren't irrational. They simply embraced life differently, finding warmth and joy where others saw only threats. To the humans, planet Zethrius the Ninth was indeed a hostile place. Electrical storms that lit up the sky like fireworks, freezing temperatures that would have shattered most species' endurance, and a sulfuric air that no human could breathe unaided. But instead of cowering or carefully strategizing every step, the humans had embraced the experience, seeing it less as a perilous mission and more as an exotic camping trip. Captain Collins, the mission leader, leaned back against a rock as the crew gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the warm glow. He pulled a marshmallow from a silver wrapper, slid it onto a long metal stick, and held it over the flames with a grin. Around him, his team laughed, exchanging stories as if they were anywhere but the deadliest planet in the quadrant. The alien perspective, a mix of curiosity and horror. In the Council's observation room, Yusal and a handful of alien officials were still locked onto the live feed, a mixture of horror, fascination, and profound confusion reflected in their wide eyes. "I don't understand it," one of Yusal's colleagues muttered, tapping his fingers in agitation. "They're treating it like a bonding ritual. What could they possibly gain from this? They're not even setting up proper defenses." Yusal watched Captain Collins as he reached over and offered his skewer to a teammate who laughed and eagerly took it, blowing on the toasted marshmallow before eating it. "They seem to think it's fun," she replied, the word foreign and almost uncomfortable in her mouth. "These humans are acting as though they're on vacation," another alien official spoke up, his tone tinged with unease. "But why haven't they engaged any scanning equipment? They're not collecting any of the data we requested." Yasal shook her head slowly. "Maybe to them this is gathering data. Perhaps they view survival as the first experiment here." The concept was baffling. The other species across the galaxy operated on rigid survival-first protocols. Setting foot on Zethrius IX required a purely strategic, cautious approach, yet the humans didn't see it that way. Alien discomfort and attempts at understanding. The officials watched as Captain Collins stirred a pot hanging over the fire. His teammate, Jake, pulled a harmonica from his pocket and started playing, the soft melodic tune floating through the frigid air. The rest of the team chuckled, occasionally clapping or singing along, entirely unfazed by their surroundings. "This is highly irregular," one counselor declared, his voice thick with disapproval. "They're not observing any of our protocols. Do they comprehend the risks?" Yasal offered a hesitant nod. "Humans have survived environments almost as dangerous on their own planet," she said quietly, remembering Earth's vast deserts, frozen tundras, and volatile volcanoes. Perhaps this is simply how they cope with unfamiliar environments. Her colleagues murmured in disbelief. "And what is that strange white substance they're consuming?" one asked, pointing to the screen as Collins speared another marshmallow and held it over the fire. "It looks like some sort of energy food," Yasal speculated, though she could see the confusion mirrored in the faces around her. To their disciplined minds, food wasn't a source of pleasure or comfort. Nutrition was simply fuel. Yet these humans were treating food as something to be enjoyed, savored, even shared, as part of their ritual. Alien frustration at the casual behavior. As the hours passed, the scene on Zethrius IX remained unchanged. The humans continued their casual gathering, occasionally wandering off to gather strange samples of rock or plant life, but mostly staying together, chatting and laughing as the fire crackled. "This isn't right," another alien official muttered. "We approved this mission for a serious scientific study, not this careless assembly." Yasal sighed, unsure whether to report the humans for protocol breach or to continue observing this strange ritual. But a part of her felt a hesitant curiosity. Perhaps the humans were following a protocol she simply couldn't see. Captain Collins' voice crackled over the audio feed, and they could hear him speaking to his team with cheerful encouragement. "All right, gang, we've got a big day ahead. Let's get a good night's rest after we finish this last round of marshmallows." The aliens were stunned. "They're sleeping here?" Yasal's colleague gasped, clearly appalled. "They're not returning to the safety of their shuttle?" Yasal could only watch in silence as the humans spread out sleeping bags around the fire, laughing as they settled in for the night. The counselors exchanged glances, unable to process this level of disregard for danger. To them, the humans' behavior was reckless, yet it wasn't mindless. The fire crackled, casting shadows on the humans' faces as they chatted softly, their voices slowly drifting into silence as they drifted off to sleep. And as the screen darkened, Yasal found herself fascinated, almost admiring their boldness, their ability to adapt in a way no other species ever had. The first signs of understanding. Hours later, when the morning check-in resumed, the Council's feed flickered back to life. Yasal was prepared for disaster, but once again, she was wrong. The humans were up and bustling around, packing their equipment, and yes, even discussing their findings. But it was the demeanor that intrigued her most. They were energetic, enthusiastic even, as if the grueling conditions were nothing more than an invigorating challenge. She started typing up her observations, noting that the humans seemed to view the hostile terrain of Zethrius IX not as a threat, but as an opportunity for recreational bonding. Her fingers paused on the keys as she considered this insight. What would the Council think? Yasal shook her head. These humans were peculiar, but in some way she couldn't yet articulate they were remarkable. The Council's debate. Should they intervene? One of her colleagues approached her, watching the human feed with an expression somewhere between admiration and horror. "Perhaps we should intervene, call them back. They're clearly unprepared for the realities of this mission." Yasal surprised herself by disagreeing. "I'm not so sure. Look at them. They're thriving in a way that we simply don't understand. This might be just how humans succeed, by adapting to the unfamiliar and making it their own. Her colleague frowned. But they're not taking this seriously. Maybe not in our way, Yasal conceded. But they're surviving. And more than that, they seem to be enjoying themselves. The words felt strange as she spoke them, but there was no other way to describe what she was seeing. She watched Captain Collins wave a hand at the camera, giving them a good-natured smile, as if he knew they were watching. There was a twinkle in his eye that seemed to say, "You'll see, this is how we do things." An alien note of admiration. By the end of the day, as the humans wrapped up their survey and prepared to return to their ship, Yasal submitted her report. But this time, she included something she'd never thought she would, a note of admiration. These humans have shown an ability to not only survive, but to transform an environment into something familiar and comfortable to them, using a method I would never have considered. Their campfire ritual is perhaps a way to solidify their unity and relieve stress, a remarkable adaptation that should be studied further. It may serve them in environments that other species would deem unsurvivable. The Council read her report with mixed expressions, and a cautious respect began to replace the earlier disapproval. Though the humans' methods were unconventional, their ability to embrace even the most dangerous situations with confidence and humor had left an impression. And as Yasal looked one last time at the screen, where the humans were laughing and waving as they ascended into their ship, she felt something rare, a sense of hope. Perhaps these peculiar beings from Earth held the key to survival in ways the rest of the galaxy could only imagine. The unexpected storm. The human team's survey continued over the next few days, and the Alien Council observed them with equal parts horror and fascination. Every morning, Captain Collins and his team would emerge from their makeshift camp with smiles, despite the ever-present dangers of Zethrius IX. But on the fourth day, a sudden crisis emerged. A storm warning signal blared in the alien observation room. Zethrius IX's violent electrical storms, known to the galaxy for their raw, destructive power, were forming rapidly above the human camp. Alien counselors watched in anxious anticipation, expecting the humans to retreat or call for help. Yet, when the Council opened a live feed to the humans, they saw Captain Collins and his crew reacting with surprising calm. The humans were already at work, battening down their camp and securing their equipment, their movements purposeful and unfazed. As bolts of energy tore across the skies, Captain Collins laughed, shouting to his team over the roar of the winds, "All right, folks, looks like we're in for some weather." The aliens were appalled. Yasal clenched her fists, struggling to contain her anxiety as she watched the humans shout orders to each other over the rising winds. To them, it was chaos, an imminent disaster. But the humans were treating it like just another day at the office. Alien Council's frustration. "We have to intervene," one counselor declared, his voice rising. "They can't survive an electrical storm on Zethrius IX." Yasal held up her hand, hesitating. "We've underestimated their methods before. Perhaps we should observe how they handle this." "They're gambling with their lives," another counselor snapped, slamming a tentacle on the table. "They should be retreating to their ship and lifting off, not—" A sudden burst of static filled the room, and Captain Collins's voice crackled over the comms. "Command, this is Captain Collins. We've got a bit of a storm coming in. Don't worry, we've seen worse." The Council stared in stunned silence. Yasal felt a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. Seen worse? How could they possibly be so calm in the face of such danger? The human solution, improvisation at its best. As the storm intensified, Yasal watched as the humans continued to defy alien logic. With the wind howling and the ground vibrating from the distant impact of lightning strikes, the humans sprang into action. They pulled out items from their bags that the Council had dismissed as trivial: tarps, bungee cords, ropes, and what looked like a haphazard collection of metal rods. "Are they setting up a shelter?" one counselor asked, horrified. "In this storm?" The humans worked quickly, tying down tarps with precision and securing their supplies under makeshift covers. They even drove metal stakes into the ground, creating what looked to the counselors like an elaborate but dangerously exposed campsite. But to the humans, it was practical improvisation. "What are they doing?" another counselor asked, baffled. "That's not going to protect them against an electrical storm." Just then, Collins turned to the camera, gave it a thumbs up, and shouted, "It's called a Faraday cage. Don't worry, we've got this." He laughed, as if setting up such a defense on a lethal planet was perfectly normal. Alien confusion and doubt. Yusal quickly looked up the term Faraday cage in the human database. She found herself surprised and impressed. The humans had constructed an improvised barrier to shield themselves from the storm's electrical currents, a method that was both ingenious and deeply unsettling to her fellow counselors. "They're using basic Earth physics to protect themselves on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy," one counselor muttered, still in shock. "It's reckless." "It's brilliant," Yusal whispered, a note of awe in her voice. But her colleagues weren't convinced. "Brilliance and madness are a thin line," another replied, "and I still think they're far too cavalier." The first crisis, an equipment malfunction. Just as the council thought the humans had stabilized the situation, another complication arose. The team's primary generator sputtered, then went silent, leaving them without a crucial power source in the middle of the storm. A look of frustration crossed Captain Collins' face as he inspected the generator. "Oh, great," he muttered. "Just what we needed." Back in the observation room, Yusal's pulse quickened. Finally, she thought, they'll realize the need for emergency assistance. But Collins simply glanced at his team, shrugged, and said, "All right, plan B. Jenkins, bring me the emergency kit. We're going old school on this one." "Old school?" Yusal whispered, her curiosity piqued. To the council's amazement, Collins pulled out what looked like a toolbox. Inside were what the counselors saw as primitive tools: jumper cables, electrical tape, and a small battery pack. The humans set to work on the generator, their expressions calm and focused as the storm raged around them. Human resilience, turning setbacks into opportunities. With deft hands, Collins and his team managed to jerry-rig a temporary fix for the generator, using spare parts and a creative configuration that no alien would have considered viable. Within minutes, the generator hummed to life, the humans grinning in triumph as the counselors watched in awe. "I don't understand it," one counselor murmured, shaking his head. "They're not following any established protocol. They're improvising as they go along." Yusal smiled slightly, her respect for the humans deepening. "They're not just surviving," she replied softly. "They're thriving. They're adapting." Her colleagues fell silent, contemplating the humans' bizarre yet effective approach. It was becoming clear that to the humans, a problem was just another challenge to be overcome with a blend of creativity and confidence. The Council begins to reconsider human protocols. In the following days, word of the humans' resilience spread through the Galactic Council. Aliens from various factions began requesting to observe the humans' progress on Zethrius IX, curious to see how they would handle the planet's endless challenges. With every new crisis, a damaged sensor, a failing water purifier, a breached tent, the humans responded with calm improvisation, using tape, glue, and other seemingly trivial items to repair what should have required complex technology. Yusal watched as other alien species tuned into the feed, marveling at the humans' adaptability. The Council's initial frustration began to shift into a strange admiration, a growing respect for the humans' unique approach to survival. "They make it look simple," one observer remarked, "but I can see now that it's anything but. They're innovating on the fly, using methods that we wouldn't even consider." "Yes," Yusal agreed, a hint of pride in her voice. "They're teaching us something valuable. Sometimes survival isn't about having the best technology. It's about knowing how to make the best of what you have." Final complication, a medical emergency. As the humans entered their last day on Zethrius IX, one final complication arose. Jenkins, a member of Captain Collins' crew, had inhaled a small amount of toxic gas from a cracked mask. He collapsed, coughing violently, as the rest of the team scrambled to help. The counselors in the observation room watched in horror, certain that this would finally be the breaking point for the humans. "This is it," one murmured. "They have to retreat." But Collins knelt beside Jenkins, examining his equipment and quickly diagnosing the issue. He didn't panic. Instead, he pulled out a portable oxygen mask, gently helping Jenkins to breathe. Then, with practiced calm, Collins adjusted Jenkins' cracked mask with layers of adhesive, sealing the breach long enough for them to reach the ship. In minutes, Jenkins' breathing stabilized, and the humans rose to their feet, clearly ready to continue their journey back to the ship. Council's reflection on human resilience. Back in the observation room, a stunned silence fell over the counselors. They had witnessed an unprecedented display of resilience, adaptability, and bravery from the humans, qualities that, for all their technological sophistication, few alien species had ever exhibited in such measure. Yusal finally broke the silence, her voice filled with admiration. They took every crisis, every setback, and turned it into an opportunity to survive. They've shown us that sometimes survival is less about preparation and more about adaptation. Another counselor nodded slowly. It seems we have much to learn from them. The council's perceptions had shifted entirely. The humans' chaotic yet competent problem-solving had challenged their understanding of resilience, forcing them to reconsider what it meant to survive in an unforgiving universe. Closing thoughts on human ingenuity. As the humans finally left Zethrius the Nine, waving goodbye to the council cameras with triumphant grins, Yusal submitted her final report. The humans have not only survived, they have thrived on Zethrius the Ninth, using creativity and resilience in ways we had not anticipated. It is my recommendation that future missions include humans as advisors on survival techniques, as they seem uniquely equipped to handle even the most chaotic environments. And with that, the Council closed the feed, left to ponder the boundless ingenuity and unshakable spirit of humanity, qualities that they now understood would be essential in exploring the farthest reaches of the galaxy. Initial reflection: a growing respect. Days after the human teams returned from Zethrius the Nine, the Council remained abuzz with conversations about the humans' mission. What had initially been seen as reckless disregard for protocol had turned into a point of fascination and respect. As Counselor Wysall reviewed her own notes, she found herself considering questions she'd never asked before. How did humans maintain such composure in life-threatening situations? Why did they insist on improvising when the risks were so high? And perhaps most pressing of all, what did it say about the galaxy's supposedly superior species if these primitive humans were capable of thriving where others would barely survive? The questions felt unsettling, even revolutionary to Yusal. She wasn't alone. Many of her colleagues were having similar existential crises, confronting deep-seated assumptions about the nature of survival, resilience, and strength. An alien council in disarray. The council held a meeting to discuss the human team's recent mission, and the atmosphere was markedly different from before. Where once there had been condescension, irritation, and even disdain for the humans' unorthodox methods, there was now a hesitant curiosity, almost a reverence. Counselor Macau, one of the council's senior members, cleared his throat as he addressed the room. "It is evident that humans possess a unique capacity for survival," he admitted, sounding almost embarrassed. "They seem to thrive on chaos, to bend it to their will. It is humbling." Yusal nodded in agreement. "What's remarkable is that they didn't treat the planet's dangers as obstacles. They viewed them as part of the experience. I think we have much to learn from them." Macau looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat. "Learn? From humans? What could we possibly gain from studying such disorder?" Yusal surprised herself with her reply. "They possess something we don't, a willingness to embrace the unknown, to trust in their ability to adapt. Perhaps that flexibility is worth studying." Alien existential crisis, reevaluating strength and survival. The Council's discussion soon shifted to broader, more philosophical questions, as members began to question the very nature of their own protocols and methods. For centuries, the galactic species had approached survival as a matter of strict adherence to routines and advanced technology. But the humans had shown that sometimes survival was about something else entirely. creativity, courage, and perhaps even a certain recklessness. One counselor shook his head, voice heavy with disbelief. If humans can survive a place like Zethrius the Nine with a bag of simple tools, a campfire, and marshmallows, what does that say about our so-called superior technology? Another counselor, a younger member who had observed the mission with fascination, chimed in. Maybe it isn't about what we have. Maybe it's about how we use it. Humans make do with what they have and turn the smallest advantages into solutions. The council fell silent, grappling with the implications. If the humans were thriving in conditions that alien scientists had deemed unsurvivable, then perhaps their assumptions about advanced species were flawed. Perhaps strength didn't always look like the sophisticated technology or meticulous procedures they had always valued. Yisal's personal reflection. Yisal, too, felt herself facing questions she'd never before considered. All her life, she had believed that survival was a matter of following rules, maintaining control, and avoiding unnecessary risks. The humans had shown her a different path, one where survival meant embracing uncertainty and finding solutions on the fly. She thought back to her initial observations of the humans on Zethrius the Nine, of their laughter around the campfire, their resourceful improvisations, and the camaraderie that had seemed to shield them from the planet's perils. In a way, their approach was almost beautiful. There was a certain poetry to their adaptability, a resilience that couldn't be quantified by technology alone. As Yisal pondered this, a thought struck her. What if the very traits she had once viewed as primitive, the humans' laid-back attitudes, their sense of humor in the face of danger, their love for simple pleasures like a campfire, were actually strengths? What if survival was as much about resilience of spirit as it was about physical capability? The Council's decision, integrating human methods. After hours of debate, the Council reached an unprecedented decision. They would document the human team's approach as a viable survival protocol, marking the first time alien policy would incorporate Earth methods. They would call it Adaptive Strategy Alpha, a protocol encouraging improvisation, creativity, and collaboration in the face of uncertain conditions. Yisal could hardly believe it. For the first time in Galactic Council history, a survival method rooted in intuition and adaptability would sit alongside the carefully calculated protocols of alien science. The Council members appeared both relieved and unnerved by this decision, as if acknowledging the strength of human methods somehow challenged their own identities. But the evidence was irrefutable. Humans had survived, even thrived, in a place that would have broken most species. And perhaps, in the uncharted corners of the galaxy, that spirit of adaptability would prove more valuable than the most advanced technology. The start of a new curiosity. In the days that followed, the Council's curiosity about humans only grew. Observers who had once dismissed Earthlings as impulsive and chaotic began requesting reports on human history, culture, and survival methods. They devoured research on Earth's most inhospitable environments, trying to understand how humans had developed such a versatile survival instinct. Yisal, who had once studied human physiology and found it unremarkable, now found herself poring over ancient Earth texts, reading about human explorers who had braved deserts, oceans, and even the vacuum of space. The more she learned, the more she understood that humans had survived through sheer willpower, adaptability, and a boundless curiosity for the unknown. One evening, as she reflected on her findings, Yisal felt a sense of wonder that she hadn't experienced in years. Humanity was a mystery, a paradox, physically fragile, yet unbreakably resilient. And as she read about the adventures of human explorers, she realized that her respect for them had turned into admiration. Human legacy on the Council. The humans, oblivious to the philosophical impact they'd made, continued their work, offering casual advice to the alien scientists who approached them with hesitant questions. Collins himself became something of a legend among the Council staff, who saw him as a symbol of a new, daring approach to exploration. "Next time you face a storm, just set up a Faraday cage," he'd say with a grin, "and if all else fails, have a marshmallow roast. You'll be surprised how much morale matters." The counselors, who would have once dismissed such advice as nonsensical, took notes, their expressions a mix of confusion and reverence. Over time, the human way of thinking, pragmatic, unorthodox, and surprisingly effective, began to permeate the Council's own approach to exploration and survival. Final reflection: a changed Council. Months later, as the counselors prepared to send a team to another uncharted world, they discussed the mission with an openness they'd never displayed before. Yasal was present, watching with quiet pride as her colleagues incorporated elements of the human protocols into their plans. For this mission, Macau announced, we will include both standard equipment and basic human essentials: tape, rope, portable stoves, and coffee. Yasal couldn't help but smile. It was a small gesture, but it symbolized a profound shift in the Council's philosophy. They were no longer approaching exploration with rigid protocols alone. They were embracing adaptability, humor, and even a touch of recklessness. As the mission brief concluded, Yasal felt a renewed sense of hope. Humans had shown them that survival was more than just a calculation. It was an act of courage, of creativity, and of community. And in a universe as vast and unpredictable as theirs, those qualities might just be the key to thriving among the stars. The Council's final word: a directive for the future. The Council issued a new directive. In any mission to an uncharted world, an element of human adaptive strategy must be included, with a focus on improvisation and morale. Study the human approach carefully, for they have shown us a path we could never have imagined. And so, with a newfound respect for humanity's peculiar strengths, the Galactic Council turned its gaze to the stars, knowing that in the vast unknown there would always be challenges, but perhaps with a bit of human spirit, they could face those challenges with courage, adaptability, and maybe even a sense of adventure. Introduction to the Ultimate Challenge. Weeks after the humans' mission to Zethrius IX, an unanticipated crisis shook the Galactic Council. But, are you certain these items are suitable for asteroid defense? Collins only grinned. Trust me, this is exactly what we need. Now, where do we start? The first challenge: a malfunctioning shield generator. The asteroid swarm was fast approaching when the first crisis struck. The main shield generator, responsible for deflecting smaller debris, failed. Alien engineers scrambled to repair it, but the technology was finicky, built with components they didn't have on hand. Panic spread among the outpost staff as they watched the asteroids drawing nearer on the screen. Collins glanced at the generator and turned to his team, barking orders. All right, folks, we've got ourselves a busted generator. Jenkins, bring out the backup cables. Sarah, grab the duct tape and those metal rods. Yasal and the other aliens looked on in stunned silence as the humans set to work on the generator with swift, practiced movements. They bypassed broken circuits, reinforced connections with duct tape and metal clamps, and rigged the power source with a jury-rigged setup that looked chaotic but worked seamlessly. Within minutes, the generator hummed to life, its shields flickering back on just in time to deflect a barrage of smaller asteroids. You fixed it, Yasal stammered, marveling at the humans' quick thinking and unconventional repairs. Collins shrugged, wiping his hands. When they don't, you improvise. Final challenge: the asteroid storm strikes and systems begin to fail. Just as the last of the outpost staff reached the evacuation shuttles, the main asteroid swarm struck. The outpost shuddered as massive chunks of space rock collided with its shielding, testing the limits of its defenses. Panels sparked, emergency lights flashed, and alarms blared as critical systems across the station began to overload. Yasal watched in horror as console after console shut down, the pressure of the impacts overwhelming the station's infrastructure. Alien engineers and scientists huddled together, attempting frantic repairs, but many of their standard procedures failed under the strain. Amid the chaos, Collins and his team sprang into action. All right, people, let's move, Collins shouted, rallying his crew. Get to the core systems and stabilize them. You know the drill. Backup circuits, manual resets, anything that'll hold. Without hesitation, the humans darted through the flickering hallways, restoring power to critical systems by any means necessary. They stripped wires, patched circuits, and rerouted energy, working with a speed and efficiency that defied alien protocols. To the aliens' astonishment, the humans didn't panic. Instead, they tackled each problem as it arose, with determination and grit. Human grit and ingenuity once again proved to be invaluable in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite the chaotic environment, Collins and his team continued to adapt, making quick decisions and finding unconventional solutions. They tackled each system failure with a unique perspective, often ignoring established alien procedures that weren't yielding results. As the final system stabilized and the immediate threat began to diminish, the alien engineers looked on with a new sense of awe and respect. Collins and his team had shown them the importance of adaptability and courage, qualities that were becoming increasingly valued within the Council. Final reflection and resolve. As the human team prepared to depart from the outpost, the Council members gathered to express their gratitude, each member now openly acknowledging the profound impact the humans' approach had made. Yusal, who had followed the mission from its inception, couldn't contain her admiration any longer. "Captain Collins, your resilience and innovation are unlike anything we've seen," she said warmly. Collins smiled, his usual easygoing demeanor apparent. "Well, Yusal, sometimes you've just got to work with what you've got. We humans may not have all the tech, but we sure know how to get the job done." Alien engineers begin to follow human lead. Watching the humans work, some of the alien engineers began to abandon their standard protocols and follow the humans' lead. They mimicked the humans' use of basic tools and improvised solutions, finding that, remarkably, these methods were faster and often more effective than their own rigid procedures. At one point, an alien scientist hesitated as she watched Jenkins secure a sparking panel with adhesive and a makeshift brace. "Is that safe?" she asked. Jenkins grinned, giving her a reassuring nod. "Safe enough to keep us going until we're out of here. Sometimes, good enough is all you need." The alien scientist nodded, a flicker of understanding dawning in her eyes. Perhaps survival didn't always mean following every rule to the letter. Perhaps it meant adapting, pushing forward, even if the solution looked unpolished. The climax: humans and aliens unite for the final stand. With the final impact wave approaching, Captain Collins and Yusal stood side by side, directing their teams to secure the remaining systems. The humans' resourcefulness and the aliens' technical knowledge combined, forming a powerful alliance against the storm's fury. An alien engineer yelled, "We're losing pressure in the east wing." Collins responded instantly, "Sarah, Jenkins, grab every tarp and clamp you've got. We're sealing that wing manually." The humans rushed to the east wing, where they quickly rigged up a series of overlapping tarps, fastening them with clamps and sealing the gaps with adhesive. Alien engineers watched, astonished, as this simple, low-tech solution held up against the strain. The counselors on the observation deck held their breath as the final wave of asteroids struck. The outpost rocked, panels flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the entire station would crumble. But the combined efforts of the humans and aliens held. Systems stabilized, pressure equalized, and the shields flickered back to life. They had done it. Together they had saved the outpost. The aftermath: a new respect for human ingenuity. As the asteroid storm passed and the station fell quiet, the exhausted teams gathered in the central command room. Alien engineers and scientists, some still processing the chaos of the past hours, looked to Collins and his team with newfound respect. Yusal approached Collins, a mixture of relief and admiration in her eyes. "Captain Collins," she said quietly, "I don't think we would have survived this without you. Your methods, they defy everything we understand, and yet they worked." Collins grinned, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sometimes you don't need the best gear. You just need to make the best of what you've got. I guess that's what we humans do." Aliens reflect on the lessons learned. As the alien teams debriefed and began to repair the outpost, discussions echoed through the halls. For the first time, alien scientists and engineers spoke openly about integrating human methods into their own practices. The humans' adaptability, their willingness to improvise, and their unshakable confidence in the face of disaster had left a lasting impression. An alien counselor, known for his strict adherence to protocol, shook his head as he reflected aloud. I used to think humans were reckless, but now I see that their resilience isn't recklessness at all. It's an understanding that not everything can be controlled. Yusal nodded, feeling a quiet pride as she listened to her colleagues acknowledge the strength they had once overlooked. Final scene, a symbol of unity. Before Collins and his team departed, the alien engineers presented them with a small engraved plaque as a token of gratitude. The inscription read, "To humanity whose courage and ingenuity saved the stars." Collins laughed, giving Yusal a friendly clap on the back. Now that's a keepsake. Just remember, if you ever find yourself in another cosmic mess, call us Earthlings. We love a good challenge. Yusal smiled, nodding. We will, Captain. You've shown us that sometimes survival is about more than preparation. It's about heart. After the dust settles, a moment of reflection. As the human team's ship disappeared into the stars, leaving the outpost calm and secure in the aftermath of the asteroid storm, the Galactic Council convened one final time. The air in the council chamber was heavy, each member absorbed in thoughts sparked by the humans' incredible display of resilience, adaptability, and ingenuity. For some council members, the humans' success was a relief, a fortunate end to a desperate situation. But for others, the experience had planted something deeper, a new understanding, a questioning of values long held as universal. Yusal sat quietly among her colleagues, reviewing her notes on the mission. What she had once considered primitive methods had saved lives and defied every assumption about what survival looked like in the galaxy. Counselor Macau voices his change of heart. Counselor Macau, who had once dismissed humans as reckless and unsophisticated, stood up to address the chamber. His tone was thoughtful, his usual sternness softened. It seems that the humans have demonstrated to us something extraordinary, he began, looking around at his fellow counselors. They showed us that survival is not just about protocol or technology, but about the willingness to adapt, to innovate, and most importantly, to trust each other in ways we have not understood before. Yusal felt a warm pride at his words, but she also knew that his statement hinted at something larger. The humans had not just inspired admiration, they had changed the Council's perspective on what it meant to be resilient, to face the unknown with courage rather than fear. Yusal's report, a new vision for galactic protocol. At last, Yusal was asked to present her formal report on the human-led mission. She stood, her mind racing as she tried to find words that would capture the essence of what she had witnessed. She'd spent her entire career devoted to understanding alien species, cataloging their traits and analyzing their behavior. But the humans had proven elusive, challenging every category she had ever used. My report, she began, highlights the strength of the human spirit, something I am not sure our terminology can adequately define. Her words earned curious glances from her colleagues. The humans approach this mission with a philosophy entirely foreign to us, Yusal continued. Where we rely on precision and caution, they rely on adaptability and intuition. Where we look to procedures, they look to their instincts and the simple materials around them. They transform challenges into opportunities, using whatever is at hand with an ingenuity I cannot explain by our usual metrics. The Council's response, a humble acknowledgement. Silence filled the chamber as the Council absorbed Yusal's words. Slowly, one by one, counselors nodded in agreement, acknowledging that the humans' approach had revealed a blind spot in their understanding of resilience and strength. Alien after alien spoke up, expressing admiration for the humans' courage and proposing that aspects of their methods be studied, perhaps even integrated into the Council's survival protocols. For the first time, the Galactic Council resolved to incorporate the human factor into their training modules, a module that emphasized improvisation, teamwork, and mental resilience over purely technical skills. This unprecedented decision marked a shift in the Council's philosophy, a recognition that sometimes the heart and mind were as powerful as any tool or technology. Yusal's personal realization. Later, as the meeting adjourned, Yusal found herself lingering in the council chamber, replaying the humans' mission in her mind. She had spent years on the council, striving to perfect her understanding of survival, strength, and adaptability. But the humans had shown her a new way of thinking, a worldview that didn't separate strength from vulnerability or courage from humor. She thought back to the campfire on Zethrius the Ninth, the humans laughing as they shared marshmallows in the middle of chaos. It was then she understood. The humans didn't thrive despite danger, they thrived with it. They faced challenges not as isolated threats, but as shared adventures, relying on their connection to one another and their belief in the strength of simplicity. In that moment, Yasal resolved to carry the humans' lessons forward, to incorporate their spirit into her work, and to remember that perhaps in some ways, the humans were showing the galaxy how to be truly resilient. The new training program, Learning from Humans. Months later, the Council's new Human Factor training program was implemented across the galaxy. Alien recruits, young, hopeful explorers, found themselves learning techniques once considered primitive, but now honored as essential. They practiced knot tying, basic engineering with simple tools, and even the peculiar duct tape fixes the humans had used with such ease. The recruits took these lessons to heart, learning that there were times when high-tech tools might fail, and they would have to depend on their creativity, trust in each other, and willingness to act without certainty. Many found the methods challenging, even unnerving, but as they practiced, they began to understand what the humans had known all along. Final reflections from the Council, the humans' lasting legacy. As the years passed, stories of the humans' mission to Zethrius the Ninth became legendary among the Council and throughout the galaxy. Many alien explorers aspired to embody the same resilience, humor, and unorthodox creativity they had seen in the humans. For Yasal, the mission was more than a story. It was a turning point. She often thought back to her initial skepticism, remembering how she had once viewed human methods with disdain. Now she found herself teaching young recruits to think like a human, to face challenges with an open mind and a fearless heart. The Galactic Council even placed a small statue in their main hall, a tribute to humanity's unexpected contributions. At its base were engraved words inspired by Captain Collins himself: "When in doubt, improvise. And if you can, share a laugh with a friend." Final scene: a galaxy forever changed. In the following years, as alien and human teams collaborated on more missions, a mutual respect blossomed, transcending differences in culture, technology, and worldview. The humans had brought more than just a unique approach to survival. They had brought a spirit that unified the galaxy in ways technology never could. One day, as Yasal prepared to brief a new crew for a mission to a distant, uncharted world, she felt a sense of quiet pride. She knew that among the supplies on every mission from now on, there would be a small, unassuming roll of duct tape, a reminder that survival wasn't always about having the most advanced tools, but about making the most of whatever was at hand. Looking out at the new recruits, Yasal felt a profound gratitude for the humans' legacy, a legacy that had woven resilience, creativity, and camaraderie into the very fabric of the galaxy.